Welcome to the Myrna Method live stream. I'm registered dietitian Myrna Haag. I do these videos to improve your life, decode the nutrition science so you don't have to, so you can eat in a dietary balanced way that will stabilize the metabolism and support lasting health. What we're going to talk about in this video is set point, and let me explain what I mean. We're going to talk about how you get to a certain weight and you just can't seem to drop below it. And it's not even your ideal body weight. And you sort of gave up the idea that there is even that hope of getting back to that college day weight. So maybe your ideal body weight is 180 pounds. We're going to focus on men in this video. And you just can't seem to get much below 210, no matter what you do. So what is the science behind that? And there is science behind it, and I want to show it to you because set point theory doesn't need to happen. So Sammy, if you're ready, let's take it right down. So we're going to talk about a little bit the difference between men and women, because in the last stream I talked about how to break the set points. I focused more on women. In this video, I want to focus more on men. And there was also a video that I focused on set point theory, period, in general. So let's just do a review if you're here for the first time. What is a set point theory? It basically suggests that the body strives to maintain a specific weight range, kind of like a thermostat regulating the temperature. And it says that the body defends this set point weight, and it's really challenging to lose weight below it. It just seems to be where you always come back to this same weight, with the core idea that the body has this biological predetermined weight range that it's always trying to maintain. And I really think this is where body positivity comes from, because honestly, when you keep struggling and you've kindly decided, no matter what I do, this seems to be the weight my body is comfortable with. And that's just the shape I am. And that's just how I'm going to have to live with it. So the set point theory kind of swarms around with a couple different ideas. Is it your mitochondria, the metabolism, insulin, appetite, brain chemicals? This is all I hear when I get on the internet. What is this set point theory? Well, we're going to bring the science to you. We're going to explain it, and we're going to explain how we can get rid of this set point theory, or actually set points, how we can break the cycle. And just like with women, my men patients say the same thing. They always say, well, I don't really eat as much food as it looks like I do. And my doctor keeps trying to tell me I need to lose weight, and it isn't like I'm not trying. And I struggle to lose weight, and I'm either doing this low calorie or maybe no carb diet. I know the low carb diets are really popular because really the low carb diets drop out a lot of water. So people are in this false sense that they're losing a lot of weight when a lot of it can be water weight. But the bottom line is you always seem to go back to that particular weight, that comfortable weight. So bottom line, it's this comfortable weight. The only diets that typically work, a lot of my male patients tell me, are the diets that are low carbs, but they always seem, no matter what, even if they're exercising regularly, they just seem to go back to this comfortable weight. So we're going to talk about, similar to the video we did with women, we're going to talk about muscle to weight ratio. We're going to talk about how muscle really dictates your metabolism and how this can offset a weight that drives you higher than what your metabolism should be giving you. So let's talk a little bit how this works. So muscle ratio can be low even on fit men. So fit men with extra body fat typically will tell me they believe that the low carbs are best because it's the low carbs that they seem to get their leaner look. I'm not saying it's really their leaner weight, but it's their leaner look. And fit men using fasting programs with low carbs are typically very popular because they can drop the extra weight super fast. So they gain a few pounds, they do a fasting, and they really drop out the carbs for a couple weeks, and boom, they seem to lose the weight quick. This is one way to set yourself up, what I call kicking the can down the road to a slower metabolism. And I'm going to explain the numbers next. But bottom line, fit men with low carbs basically have less insulin release. They have less muscle glycogen. Muscle glycogen is the storage of glucose, glycogen storage, the storage of glucose in the muscle. But when you have less muscle glycogen because you're not eating a lot of carbs and you're not really releasing a lot of insulin because you're not eating a lot of carbs, this can mean you have less ability to build your muscle optimally. Believe it or not, insulin is an anabolic hormone, and insulin actually not only helps shuttle the sugar into the muscle, but it actually helps with protein synthesis. That's why with a lot of my diabetic men, I can see a lot of muscle atrophy. And when I see the muscle atrophy, I'm also going to see a change in their metabolism, and there's also going to be a higher weight, higher set point. So let me use 3 examples of 3 patients. I've got Tom, and by the way, what is the common denominator with all these patients is that they're all the same height. Okay, and they all have an ideal body weight based on that height of anywhere from 160 to 170 pounds. So we're going to look at Tom. He has 64 pounds of muscle, and he weighs 146 pounds. Now, the thing I want you to look at in all these examples, and what I'm trying to drive home, is the amount of muscle in pounds dictates the amount of metabolism, and I call it burn calories, which I'm really referring to is the metabolism, what the calorie burn is per day. So what is consistent, and it's the same with women, is the amount of muscle you have is primarily going to determine your metabolism, because the metabolism is all about the muscle. So with Tom, we're seeing that he has 64 pounds of muscle, 64 and a half pounds of muscle, and the calories burned there, his metabolism is 1,950 calories. That's what he needs to sustain those 64 and a half pounds of muscle. John, same height, he has 85 and a half pounds of muscle. And if you look at the calories for John, they're literally a lot more than they are for Tom. He's got almost 500 calories more he can burn because he has more muscle. It has nothing to do with the height, has nothing to do with the age. It's strictly the muscle. And then there's Bill, same height. He has 72 and a half pounds of muscle, and he gets to burn even more. He is actually burning, he's 72 and a half pounds of muscle, which is less than John, and he's actually burning less calories for that. Now, I want you to notice the difference in the weight in each of these patients. Tom is 146 pounds, and he is 64 pounds of muscle. John is 223 pounds, 85 pounds of muscle, and Bill is 235 pounds with 72 pounds of muscle. So when you look at each one of these patients, the key is that their metabolism is driven based on their muscle and their weight. Bill weighs 235 pounds. He would like to get down to his 160 to 170 pounds, but bottom line, he is at 235 pounds because he's probably eating close to 2,300 calories. A lot of people think, well, Bill must be eating tons of calories to be that weight. Not necessarily, okay? And that's what I want to drive home. When we look at Bill, we're going to pull Bill aside. Bill's muscle at 72 and a half pounds, giving him a metabolic burn of 2,250 calories. We'll come back to that muscle weight ratio. For the extra fat, there's only going to be a small metabolic extra. There's going to only be a small metabolic benefit, if you will. So even though he weighs a lot more, fat does not have a lot of metabolic activity. So he only gets about 100 to 150 more calories because he has the extra, 50, 60 pounds of fat as the other patients. So really, the key I'm trying to make here is that once you gain weight, it isn't like you get to eat a lot more calories for all this weight you gain. It's all based on the muscle. So now we're going to drive home the point that Bill is going to go on a sustainable weight loss. And we're going to talk about what's sustainable and what's not. And when I talk about sustainable weight loss from a dietitian standpoint, I'm talking about a healthy weight loss. I'm talking about a weight loss that does not touch muscle. We want to hang on to the muscle because we actually want Bill to keep most of that metabolism. So Bill went from 235 pounds to 165 pounds. And he did it on a sustainable weight loss. His muscle weight ratio did change. We'll talk a little bit about that. From a dietitian, I do look at that muscle weight ratio when I'm looking at my patients and I'm getting a body composition. But what I want to show here is that by keeping his muscle where it is, and there's no reason why he can't, he gets to keep a very similar metabolism. So when he weighed 235 pounds, his metabolism was 2,250 calories. And now, because he kept that same amount of muscle, because he was on a sustainable weight loss, he got down to 165 pounds, and that metabolism is 2,100. He kept fairly close to the same metabolism that he had when he was carrying the extra weight. And that's exactly where I want all my patients to be. But unfortunately, this is not what's going on. People will do quick weight loss programs because a lot of people say, Myrna, I'm going to do your sustainable weight loss program once I lose the weight. So I'm going to go jump on Mounjaro, or I'm going to go do this really quick weight loss program. And, when I get the weight down, then I'll come see you. Well, what I'm trying to tell you is once you get the weight down, then you're going to have a lot more work going for you because your metabolism is going to get really lower. Then it's going to be a lot tougher. So when I look at this quick weight loss, Bill went from 72 pounds down to 58 pounds, but he literally went down to his ideal 165 pounds. So I wanted to keep both of these up to show you the difference with a quick weight loss, losing the muscle, and his calories now are going to be 1,800 a day. He weighs 165 pounds, but on the quick weight loss, his metabolism is 1,800 calories a day. But when he did the sustainable weight loss, then his calories are going to still stay up around the 2,200. So the difference is that when you do the quick weight loss and you're not paying attention to muscle, or you're doing a lot of these fasting and you're just trying to get that weight off quick, what happens is you drop the calories down for what it is required to maintain your weight. So bottom line, quick weight loss can reduce your muscle and it can slow down the metabolism. But the bad news here is the weight can still come back. So let's show you what happens, first of all, let me see if I find the video slide that gives a better representation. Well, let me show you, first of all, what a sustainable weight loss program is all about. It's knowing that you can only burn fat. We don't want you to burn muscle. And a sustainable weight loss is going to be taking the calories, the metabolism that Bill would be at, which is the 2,100, 2,200 calories at this high muscle. I only want anywhere from 400 to 600 calories off this. This is sustainable. Anything other than that, I can't promise you that you're not going to be burning muscle. So when we do the calories, and we actually do the math on this, it comes out to about 1 to 1.3 pounds of fat a week. Because if you take anywhere from the 400 to 600 calories times 7 days, you're going to get 3,500 to 4,200 calories per week. You divide that out for a pound, and that's going to be pure fat that Bill's getting off the body just because he's not doing this is sustainable. He's not doing this quick weight loss. Now, a lot of people will go, well, I don't want to do that. What good is that? Well, ideally, if you're doing it the right way, and what is the right way. It's understanding these macronutrients have a balanced way of eating. And that's all I talk about in my program, is I'm trying to get people off this whole ridiculousness that we've got to be doing these quick weight loss programs. It's all about losing weight, losing weight, losing weight. It's really about sustaining your leanest weight. And I do plenty of podcasts talking about hang on to the muscle, because when you hang on to the muscle, you hang on to immunity. And when you look at anti-aging, it is all about keeping the muscle. But bottom line, macronutrients are critical. Getting the right amount of protein, fiber, fats, and carbs for the day are essential for hanging on to muscle, especially the protein and the carbs. So how much do you need? I talk about this also in a lot of my podcasts. We're going to focus on men to get to an ideal body weight. This is just a formula that we use, dietitians. I know this can change based on muscle. So when I do have a patient that has a lot more muscle, it is going to change their ideal body weight. I'm not going to give you that math right now, but I'm going to show you, because I'm trying to drive the point with these quick weight loss programs. Once you lose the muscle, okay, you lose the metabolism. And it's certainly hard. You lose 12 pounds of muscle, good luck trying to work out to get that back. It's not very easy, especially when you're over 60 and you don't have all that testosterone working for you. So I say, why not try to lose it, right? Let's try to reserve the muscle than try to work twice as hard gaining it back. For men, the ideal body weight you take, for every inch over 5 feet, you're going to add 6 pounds. And you're going to add it to the base of 106 pounds. So if you're 5'10", 10 inches, right? So if you're 5'10", that's going to be 10 times 6. That's going to be 60. I add it to 106. It's going to give me 166 pounds for ideal body weight. So and that's based on the height. That's why when we looked at some of my patients, I was able to give you the math on that. But now let's look at figuring out the macronutrients. For protein, this is minimum. You take your current weight and you divide it by 2. So if you weigh 200 pounds, that's your current weight. You divide it by 2, it's going to give you 100 grams of protein. And for carbs, and I did this formula because nobody can understand percentages. It's so hard when I tell my patients, hey, you really should have anywhere from 45 to 50% carbs. And they're like, oh, I can never do that. Oh my God, I would just gain so much weight. And a lot of the reason for that is because there's some insulin resistance going on. We're not going to talk about it in this video, but in previous videos, I have discussed that. So with carbs, you take your ideal body weight and you multiply it by 1.3. And that's going to give you the 2 biggest factors that you need to hang on to muscle. Make sure the muscle gets enough carbs to sustain the fuel, to get the glycogen where it needs to go. It helps bring the insulin where it needs to promote muscle growth, and make sure you get enough protein. And obviously, you got to exercise. So let's take some other examples of patients. I'm going to take my patient, Tom. He is 5'9", but now we want Tom to get a muscle mass that is actually more legitimate for his height. So, and I'll show you how I got these numbers if some of the people are wondering. I use patient data. I'll show you how to do the science. So at 5'9", 64 pounds, he looks like he has a good muscle weight ratio. I like to see my men anywhere between 44% muscle weight ratio or higher. But I also want to make sure there's enough muscle mass, because sometimes people can just weigh not very much and it can look like they have a lot of muscle ratio because they just don't weigh very much. So there is a factor that we have to look at. We want to make sure we have enough mass. So when we look at Tom, he has 64 pounds of muscle, but for his height, he would actually need 70 pounds of muscle. So this means that he would actually have to gain some weight. Now, let's say Tom gained weight because they said, Tom, you're really at 146 pounds for your height. You really need to be 160 to 170 pounds. So his doctor says, it would probably be a good idea you gain weight. So Tom takes advice and he just eats whatever he wants. He gains weight. He's not really concerned with how he's gaining the weight. He's just gaining the weight. And what happens is that he gains the weight and he increases fat weight. That's not going to change his metabolism. So he still stayed at 64 pounds. He increased the weight. He brought his weight up to 160 pounds. Everybody's saying, wow, I'm so glad you gained those extra, 15 pounds. You look a lot better. But honestly, he's not doing much better because he didn't touch the muscle. That meant that his metabolism increased a little bit. So he weighs more, but his metabolism is almost the same as when he weighed 146 pounds. But if Tom would have increased muscle weight, if he would have taken on a little more intensity in his program, upped his exercise program, got on those weights, increased his muscle, he would have increased his metabolism. So that's what happens a lot of times when people are underweight and, they're trying to gain weight. If they're not focused on getting out there, lifting some weights and really improving their muscle mass, they're just gaining weight by getting on the scale and trying to gain some pounds. It doesn't work. So let me just take you through some examples and how I got to these ideal muscle weights for men and women. Is one thing I know is certain. We don't want men to be over 20% fat because there's enough research to show excess body fat is not a great thing. So with that being my variable that I held constant, and I did anywhere from 20 to 21%, because some could be 20.4, 20.3. So I went from 20 to 21%. Which meant that their muscle weight ratio would be 44% because there is a dynamic there when you look at the skeletal muscle versus the body fat versus the bones and water, certain basic percentage. You can do the math and you can deduct down that if men were to be at less than 20% fat, they would have to have a muscle to weight ratio anywhere from 43.5 to 44.5. They would have to have a muscle to weight ratio at 44% to be able to have that body fat under 20%. And then from here, I was able to compute, it's just simple math, approximately how much muscle mass they would need in pounds based on their height and their ideal body weight. And this is pretty much an average, but as a dietitian, what it allows me to see is a couple things. If I have somebody underweight, I want to make sure that they get the right amount of weight, but they do it in muscle. Or if I have somebody that's carrying a lot of muscle, this ideal body weight may not even hold true for them. So if I had Tom with, 85 pounds of muscle, well, then his ideal body weight could be up much higher. It could be as much as 184 pounds, okay? Even though his height is still 5'9". If he's carrying all that muscle, I want his ideal body weight higher. Because when you're looking at ideal body weight, you're looking at the metabolism, it's all in the muscle. And as a dietitian, I always look at body composition first. Hang on to the muscle. Build the muscle, because that's where the metabolism is. That's where the health is. And similar to women, I did the same. With women, we want their body fat under 28%. So I took anywhere from 28 to 29. That was my constant variable. And then I could draw out where that muscle weight ratio should be for women, which was about 40%. Remember, I have data. That's how I get this. I have my sample data. I have my patients that I use. And this is where I can really understand, not only can I see where these variables need to be held for my patient, but I also have track of all their diets and their exercise programs. So obviously I can look at the patterns and I can pretty much do deductive reasoning because I can see the patients that are at that 40% or higher, what kind of exercise they're doing, what kind of intensity. And on average, even for men and women, it's going to be, what I have found, anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes a day. Well, I would say 5 to 6 times a week. And they're doing intensity, okay, where they can really tell the muscles are working. So they're not just leisurely walking, they're pumping the muscles, they're getting a little higher intensity, they're using some resistance training. And what's really interesting, just to get at this 40% for women and 44% for men, you don't have to kill yourself. Now, if you want a higher percentage, well, yeah, you're going to have to lift a little heavier and do a little more max training. But just getting yourself into some type of exercise program where you have resistance, whether it's, you're walking faster, you feel the muscles burning, and then, of course, you got to do something for your upper body. On average, I say 20 minutes for the lower body, 20 minutes for the upper body, and I'm getting these percentages on my patients. And then from women, what I was able to do, same with the men, because I got these numbers, I was able to get the muscle mass that I want to see my women at, okay? So if I have a woman who's 5'6", I want her to have 52 pounds of muscle. Now, you could be 5'6" and be underweight and have a good muscle to weight ratio, but then I'm immediately going to look at that muscle mass because I want you to have a good muscle to weight ratio, but not because you're underweight. It could be because you have less fat. I want the mass. I want the mass. I want the muscle. So this is what I use for my patients. What I know is true is that if I can get them at their muscle weight they should be, right, I'm also going to get the right calories that they are at for that ideal body weight. And what could happen with someone like Kelly if she had gone on a quick weight loss program, lost this gorgeous muscle she had, and she had her muscle a lot less, then her metabolism would be a lot less. And then, of course, if she started to gain weight, because that's easy to do, she could gain more fat, but she doesn't get to gain the metabolism. And that's the whole set point, whether it be for men or whether it be for women. So bottom line, women do have less muscle than men. Women tend to diet more than men, so they tend to do they tend to be more concerned about their weight. So you know what? I see more women patients having issues with set point. Where they tell me, oh my gosh, I can't seem to get down to my ideal body weight of 160 pounds. I can't seem to get down to my ideal body weight. I seem to be at this 180 or 190 no matter what I do. Well, that's because your calories are probably already down to 160. Okay? Because your muscle is not where it needs to be. So what I try to do is keep them on a sustainable weight loss program. I am not about weight loss, okay? I am about creating the most optimum healthy patient with the leanest weight, which means we're going to bring the muscle in. We're going to not get them on these ridiculous low quick weight loss programs. So you might lose 3 pounds a month or 4, but it's going to be fat. And if we're really balancing, which is what my program's all about, and I can really get you to understand the importance of all these macros, how they work in your meals, because there is a balancing act with the meals and also for the end of the day. Here is what I have found with my patients, okay? And honestly, it's held true for over a decade, and it's never not worked. It literally will, when they're doing this balanced, sustainable weight loss, it's usually only about 500 calories that the body's going to allow them to come down to without affecting food addiction and them starving themselves. So there is so much to really understand how the body works. And then I always say that there really isn't a quick loss solution. I say that there's the right solution. It's about lifestyle. By the way, people ask me, how do you do all this? I mean, I do look at studies. I think studies are good, but I like sample. I like data because data never lies. It's there, it's what's true, it's what's happening. So I use a lot of data to get to a lot of my conclusions. I do back it up with studies, of course, because I like to see if other people had the same outcome with their data. But bottom line, your ideal muscle weight is 44% for men. I find that to be best. Women, it's 40. And the ideal muscle mass is then calculated based on this ratio and based on an ideal body weight. And I just want to mention that age and current weight is just so not relevant. I don't understand when people say people that are older need to be fatter. I don't find that to be true. I have patients in their 90s, and this is not true. I make them build muscle just like everybody else, and I think that's the reason why they're still in their 90s. So it's really irrelevant to age and your current weight. And I think a lot of the studies that are reflecting this, I believe they're observational studies. I think that they just looked at observationally what they saw in the population and then just kind of reported that. And that's definitely not what I do. I actually try to look at what's going to create the best outcome. And this is just kind of an example of my spreadsheet for men. The Mifflin-St. Jean formula is what everybody uses. It's actually worthless, okay, because it takes height into consideration and age. Cunningham is what I'm using because it's actually taking muscle mass, right? So muscle is where your metabolism is at. And keeping your muscle, I recommend anywhere from 1 to maybe 1.5 pounds per week of fat burn. Anything in excess of that, it's either going to probably be a lot of water, and I'm not really sure you can hang on to muscle if you start burning more weight than that. And you want to make sure to get your ideal protein grams for the day, minimum. You take your current weight and divide it by 2. And you can even pad that with another 20 or 30 grams, and you're probably going to be doing great. I don't want to skimp on the protein. And then you want to get your carbohydrates. And you're going to take your ideal body weight, multiply that by 1.3. That at least gives you an idea how many carbs you should be taking in to keep those muscles where they need to be. And then obviously we want to do vigorous exercise anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. I find more 45 minutes is more in line. And when I talk about protein, if you don't get enough protein, your body eats muscle, okay, eats muscle tissue. This is not a good thing. So I'm not a big proponent of fasting. I think a lot of people fast because they're wanting to lose weight and they're screwing up their metabolism. I know, I've seen the research on autophagy. I get it, some of the anti-aging. But really, if you want anti-aging, do the exercise and do a sustainable program in food. That's anti-aging because you're going to get to your leanest weight hanging on to the most muscle. And also, a lot of people don't realize this, but for every gram of glucose your muscle stores, it binds with 3 grams of water. Think about that. The way you hydrate your body is with carbohydrates, and that's why they're called carbohydrates. Carbo fuel, hydrate water. So when you deplete the muscle of carbohydrates, you will lose a lot of water weight from the muscle. Not a good idea. Muscles don't like it. They do not build well when they're dehydrated, and they do not build well when they don't have a lot of glycogen. Not to mention that when insulin allows the glucose into the muscle, it also helps increase protein synthesis. A lot of bodybuilders know this. They know insulin's an anabolic hormone. It helps build baby build. Also, another thing for food addiction, you're running on depleted carbohydrates. A lot of people don't know this, but there's a neurotransmitter. The muscle sends to the brain and it says, I want more carbs. Even if you just ate a huge meal, your muscles will dictate you wanting more sugar. It's just how muscles work. So hopefully that helps. Muscle and metabolism, they go together. Losing weight too fast can lower your muscle weight ratio. It decreases your metabolism, making it impossible to maintain your leanest weight. losing approximately 1 to 2 pounds of fat per week. I would say 2 pounds is too much, probably 1 to 1.5. And remove food addiction by knowing how to eat, balancing those macronutrients. Of course, you exercise, maintain those protein grams for your current body weight, and bring those carbs in based on your ideal weight. Okay, you guys know it. I talk about it every podcast. You can get my book for $2.99 on Kindle. That's a buy you can't afford not to. And I do talk about why diets fail, which is what I talk about all the time, and the science that really works. Understanding it's about sustainability. You cannot beat the ticket, okay? By the way, you can never out-exercise a bad diet as well, because your metabolism can still drop because you're not giving the muscle what it needs to build. And also, I have my program. It's my membership program. If you want to join it, I'd love it. And this is where I really talk about how you keep a sustainable diet to maintain the muscle, maintain your life, maintain your health. So, Sam, how are we doing on the chat?
All good.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, great. Until next week, thank you much. And like, subscribe. I appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see you later.